Boom! From Instagram to YouTube, here we are. Welcome, awesome people. My name is Abby Adams, as you can probably see here. This is Faye Reid, as you can probably see there. And down here, we have Charlotte Fowles, Executive Confidence Coach, but she is also the Executive Adventurer. Did I get that right?
You did get that right. Thank you.
Thank you, darling. Today, we are talking about making a comeback. Now, if you watched us on Instagram and you followed over, you'd know what we was talking about. But for those that are just playing catch up on YouTube, I was reading the Sunday Times on Sunday, as the name implies, where I saw this lovely article about Madonna, where it says, back into the groove at 64, but is she still in vogue? 40 years after revolutionising pop, Madonna is set to play a string of giant shows. Will she shock us all over again? Or simply embarrass herself? Tumbleweed.
Now, following on from Instagram, and I think, as I just said, it's what it does show. I think when people criticize others, it says something about them and their own thought process on how they view things. I've always prided myself on not being a prude and being, live your life, do what you want to wear and all the rest of it. And I've had to acknowledge that in some areas I've challenged myself to be not so prudish and realize that actually worrying about others' perceptions is not going to enhance my life. Now, what I will also say though, and it'd be interesting to discuss this, is Madonna also has her own insecurities. I mean, the face, like that says you're slightly insecure or worried or want to retain your looks and such forth, because she's had a lot of work done. You can't tell me that's not work, because she has had work done. So I think there's also a bigger context there. She might be dancing around in her knickers and doing high kicks and revealing bits and pieces, but she's also tapping into people's perceptions of her. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You know, I mean, what is the definition of prude? Because as I had a conversation with someone the other day, my tone of green is different from your tone of green, you know, and what does that mean to you? I mean, having recently just bared a naked picture of myself on Instagram, I'm like all over it. Do you know what I'm saying? But I totally hear what you're saying, Faye, about the way that she has evolved in regards to plastic surgery and so on and so forth. Do you know what I was thinking about in preparation for this was when I was growing up, I used to rummage through my parents' drawers. You just did, didn't you? You used to find amazing things. I found her sex book when I was about 8. It's like, what the fuck is this? And I remember turning these pages and seeing this woman like, oh my God. But it was fascinating. Like, what was she doing? She was just so comfortable in her skin. And then I would hear my parents discussing how she probably slept her way to the top. She's a bit of a slag, bit of this, bit of that. And I thought, but you've got a sex book in your cupboard. But what? And when I look back and I see my mum saying the same thing, not having a pop at my mum at all, but because you don't realise how you are educated to tear down your fellow sisters, are you? It's like when someone says, oh, woman driver. What? You're a woman. You know, I find this, you know, who's the greatest catalyst of conversation towards this? Is she embarrassing herself? Is it men or women? Interesting. Who wrote this?
I think it's a real mixture. I was going to say about that. So when you were mentioning prude, Faye, and it's a really great question that Abby asked, because what I love about our beings, I won't say mind versus body, because we're all, you know, we should be operating with them in sync, is that, but the subconscious mind there's I think 19 prime directives that it functions on, and 85% of what we do and our life, 85% is subconsciously driven. And all of that stuff, whether we're a prude or not, until we start to challenge our beliefs, our unconscious bias, our conditioning, it's in there, and it's not like we chose it. And it's one of the prime directives of the subconscious mind is to be a highly moral being. Now, morality is subjective. So depending on what, environment and culture you grew up in, your version of prude, might be something completely different to somebody else, and within cultures as well. And I think that's what's really interesting to note, is that we can challenge these things, because it's not just who we are. It's, this is all set before we're, our beliefs set before we're like 7 usually, because we're such all sponges and we take everything in and we form our beliefs around the world subconsciously before we're 7, and then before we're 13 is around our values and stuff. But we can challenge those, but you've got to know what they are first. I think that's what's really interesting about the version of prude or not, is to, like you said, you found your mum's sex book. I remember I grew up in a very loving, wonderful family, quite strict Methodist Christian upbringing, and went to a Catholic school, not a Catholic though. And so the lots and lots of love and stuff. I remember finding a book my dad had given to my mum. It's just a fiction, but it wasn't Jilly Cooper, but it was something like that. And I remember and I remember giving it to her as a gift. He'd buy us, like, I don't think he read it. He didn't know what was in it. It's quite clearly a women's book of the time. It's pink on the cover and it's got people in an embrace or something. Anyway, it's a really good story. But I remember proper graphic at points, and I was like, oh, you only suddenly realize, oh my God, your parents are people. Ew, my mom actually read this and has kept this book. But it wasn't like it wasn't. It was just a really interesting awakening, because you don't put these things together. And if nobody sits you down and goes through that, and that's why I think it's quite nice. There's so many things that are problematic these days about TikTok and like various platforms and things. But I think it does give a chance for parents, not that I am one, but parents to sit down and have conversations, like, the person who will remain nameless, who's been arrested, for propagating misogyny and all the rest of it. It gives a chance for a parent to say, this is what this is what consent is, this is why it's problematic. So it's just really, really, really interesting point.
Can I just two things? Sorry, Faye. So this article was written by a woman. And secondly, I remember you just took me back then about the book that your mum. I remember going to my primary school fair, and I bought a book, and it was by really well known, and it was an adult like sex book, and I never forget. Like I remember my mum and dad, stepdad laughing because I've heard about it. And I never forget the term, he stroked her soft downy triangle.
Was it written by a man? Because there's a prize in fiction. Did you know this? There's a prize in fiction for the worst written sex scene. Seriously, there's a prize that goes out. I need to look up who got it last year, but it's like a well-known prize. They give out a prize for the worst written scene.
I never forget that, he stroked her soft downy triangle.
I do remember reading Jilly Cooper books though, thinking,
I can't remember what it was. They're really well known, like name a book. I never forget that. I mean, God, no wonder women were on like medication back then. I mean, it was just terrible, weren't it? No vibrators back then either. But
I read something about women's pleasure and people being like hospitalized, and like I can't remember what it was, so I read it the other day. It was absolutely fascinating. People studying the female orgasm and like actually basically hospitalizing people who are enjoying themselves.
Oh my God,
control, absolute control, isn't it? That's what it comes down to.
Well, and at the time they didn't understand it. At the time they didn't, I don't think they knew what it was, so they were trying to control it because they didn't understand it, therefore they feared it. And underneath a lot of this stuff is fear, for sure.
Well, when you look at it, I mean, it's exactly what I think Madonna exemplifies, isn't it, really? She is one sexual being. She's not afraid of her sexuality. She's not afraid to share it. She's not afraid to express it. And what happens when someone is so confident and comfortable in that area is, well, you want to rip them down, don't you? I think there's some great education there in regards to for men and women. And to focus, like what I said earlier, to focus on simply the embarrassing side of things. She's 64. When you look back at her illustrious career, she has evolved every single time. She's never come back the same, has she, really? There's been a transition. There's been a change in the way that she expresses her body, but also her music. I mean, you don't see her out there in every bar going flaunting it that way. She does it in a very artistic way, I believe. You know, you don't see her on Love Island or Celebrity MasterChef, do you? Do you know what I mean? She's doing and cultivating the craft. Yeah,
Well,
what
she's
your-
controlling it, is what she's doing.
yeah,
This is what I want to do. She's not doing any TV shows or anything like that. She's controlling what goes out about her in terms of visually. She's controlling it. She's not letting anybody twist it and stuff. And I was thinking another one like that, but not so, I suppose, in your face, is Cher.
yeah.
Cher's another one, because I always think back to Cher's iconic all-in-one bodysuit thing, which with the knickers that were not really knickers. They were just
I was just like, where is it?
Yeah, I was like,
is she going to
was
risk
also
a
in
high
awe.
kick?
Come from, right?
Like,
I was also in awe because I just thought, how old are you? Bitch, you're slaying it though.
I was like, where's it gone? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and it's nothing to do with size or shape or anything, right? But if I wore that and did a high kick, I'd be, you know, we've all seen those memes as well of like, yeah, hospital, of all the like gymnasts that have those revealing costumes and then like have an accident, like, you know, because something falls out, and you're just like, it's just, I mean, it's brave and amazing.
Would it? I'm not being funny. In my case, there'd be everything falling out. I mean, it's just not.
I want to know, but of course, that's the sort of question somebody would immediately ask her, isn't it? Because we all want to know. We don't want to know in a salacious way. We just
We've lost you, Charlotte.
Yeah, we've lost you, Charlotte.
wanting to know that.
Oh.
Sorry, just glitched there. But anyway, yeah. She's great.
Yeah, I love Cher.
Yeah.
So when we look at Cher, I mean, again, totally different, really, but both incredibly comfortable in
Not
their
doing a
bodies
shit.
and their expression. Yeah. And I mean, is Cher making a comeback now? But we are so fixated on this continual access to a facade, aren't we? That you don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
And it's not sustainable. Like, you know, you can't, I mean, this is why I said on the Instagram, I don't like the word comeback. Come back from where? Like, there are seasons, like, obviously we're cyclical beings, but also there are seasons in nature, there are seasons in life, there's always seasons, and not everyone's seasons look the same. And, you know, people that, you know, they've talked a lot about Madonna continually reinventing herself. And, you know, in my work, I talk to people about, we are not self-development, because your self is perfect, but you are unlearning. So each layer, each season, you're basically unlearning this conditioning that I talk about, this subconscious programming, conditioning, whatever you want to call it, that happens without our, you know, without us doing anything about it. And when we start to unlearn and unpick that, we become freer, we set boundaries, we look like we don't give a shit, like all those sort of things. But it's actually, it's an unlearn. It's the great unlearn. It's like we're perfect to start with, and then we get covered up. There's an analogy by a coach called Michael Neal, I think. He talks about the diamond, talks this thing about diamonds. Obviously, diamonds are mined through literally mining through layers of crap. Literally, they've built up over the centuries, and you mine, you get to the diamond. That's a bit like what this work is. And it's a bit like that. It's not, doesn't necessarily come with age for people. I think people are like, oh, they're just older, they don't care. But lots of people get more anxious and less confident as they get older, as things start to weigh on them. You have to do work to strip back this stuff, and you can't do it all at once. So it's like bit by bit, and then you become a slightly different version. And this reinvention, you know, she gets to play because that's her job, and that's amazing. And a lot of us don't get that. And on the Instagram that Abby and I did the other day, that sadly the technology did not save, we were talking about this, and I was talking about, she obviously has a huge privilege that she has worked massively hard for, that she clearly has, she has wealth, like she may not have to do this, so she gets a bit more freedom in that regard. Whereas those of us that have jobs that maybe they're corporate jobs, maybe they're not, but, you know, we are aware that people might not take as kindly to us doing our own thing and literally doing whatever we like. But she's also trapped in the way too. So it's quite interesting. This balance is another concept that I talk about in my work, because for us mere mortals, we have this balance, and we've got to pay the bills, so maybe we can't express ourselves as much because what people think matters, if that means it affects our livelihood. But the commercialization of actors and musicians and people like that, that's also a thing. You know, they also have to be seen to be keep selling, right? Is what they're doing commercial? Is it commercially viable? Is it going to sell? I used to
Is it
work
going
in
to hurt their brand?
exactly. I used to work in politics with central government, and there was a question around the special advisors. Does this gig, this speech, this piece of writing, whatever the person I was working with at the time was doing, is there votes in it? Like, who's got the biggest viewing figures? Which show are we going to go on to talk about this policy? Some ministers had passions, like some of them were really good people and had passions for things that they wanted to make a difference. No votes in it, can't talk about that. Like, really, really interesting. So there's this sort of public figure, almost paradox between I've got this money, so I can have the freedom to do this and express myself, as Madonna would say, but also I am also at the start of her career, for sure, it's all this commercial stuff, and it's this sort of juggle and this balance. And I think that's why you see so many artists doing whatever the chuff they want later on when they've got the money that isn't as commercial. They'll get a small niche fan base or a large niche fan base, but it won't be the pop side. I mean, I think there's somebody from Pink Floyd, I think it's like that, who's now doing something very sort of psychedelic and you know, almost not country, but, you know, really ye oldie type stuff. But of course, they made their money and their fame being Pink Floyd. So it's fascinating.
I just caught a glimpse here. I was just looking through it, and Madonna has always had talent for provocation.
Easy for you to say.
Oh, I can't say it now.
Provocation.
That's the one. Thanks, darling.
That's it.
Well, we've got you on so you can
We got
speak
there.
for us. She's managed to be condemned by the Vatican not once but twice in regards to when she seduces a black Jesus and dances in front of burning crosses. I mean, yeah, but I mean, condemned by the Vatican again.
It's
a
they're
rather
imposing.
masculine-
Yeah, it's their views, and I'm going to stay away from the religion aspect for today. I think I'll park
We could go down that route. Yeah,
I'll park that one. But I just think it's the one thing I'm learning is you can't control. For my own personal perspective, I can't control other people's views on me. People are going to think what they think and say what they say, and I think I'm happy in the knowledge of who I am and how I kind of behave. And
how'd you get there, Faye? How'd you get there? For Madonna, I mean, I'd be curious to know how
she feels. Does she question things?
Yeah, I mean, Madonna, if you're watching this, which I'm sure you will be, why wouldn't you? How does that make you feel? You know, I know we talk about having a thick skin, but it's not the thick skin, is it? It's coming from that place where you actually love who you are, so that everything else doesn't stick. It doesn't stick.
I would say it's a combination of things. I think a combination of insecurity, a combination of not believing in myself, and a combination of situations. From me, because I've talked about this previously with a therapist, and like how me now compared to me 5 years ago are two very, very, very different women. I was always been quite insecure anyway, and then the menopause caused me to have anxiety. But I think, and it's funny, I say the menopause, I've come out of it and just not giving a heck. I do give a heck, but I'm just a bit more like not so much fixated about what other people think. I think losing my mum, which was one of the most painful thing, or the painful thing to happen to me in my life, kind of just turned me into a bit of a different person, as in I just want to live my life. I'm sorry. The realization, 1 second someone's here and then the next second they're not. I was just like, I want to live my life. And the third thing, which I can't talk about, is I had to go through an experience where I had to stand up for myself. Something happened and I became so angry and I fought to stick up for myself. It's a situation that had happened to me in the past And it happened again. And in the past, I just let it go. And it happened again. And this time I was like, no, I'm not having this. I don't. And I think it was anger through the menopause and anger through my mum, losing my mum. And that anger fused into, I'm not having this shit. I'm just not having it. And consequently, it's transformed me into this person that just wants to live my life. I want to be happy. And I don't worry so much, because I'm not saying it's completely gone. I don't worry so much about what other people think. And I've set, and I hope I have values for myself, that I live by those values, which help me to not worry so much about what other people think.
Well, I think that's it. It's the value, is it? We're not educated or given the time to find out what we truly value as individual human beings. It is about a community as such. It's thinking about everyone else, isn't it? And how this impacts everyone else. Well, what I have gathered and learned about myself is that if I am valuing and supporting what I value, then it makes the support that I give others a lot stronger. And I think this speaks volumes about Madonna. I think that you can see exactly what she values in her life. It is very, very clear. As an artist, I mean, even as a parent, you know, she's not one of these people that sticks her family on social media. You don't see them a lot, you know. Where's the celebration of that? Where's the celebration of all of, like what you said, Charlotte, of all the work she does behind the scenes? Like, where is that?
It doesn't sell, does it? I mean, this is where they're sort of trapped and stuff, and I think that's where we have a freedom. Because okay,
Because
so
I'd want to
I
read
think
it.
you
I'd
and
love
I
to
spoke
read
about
it.
this before Christmas, and you may be aware of the wonderful author Matt Haig, and he wrote a book, Reasons to Stay Alive, and a book called Notes on a Nervous Planet. And people are often driven by fear, and therefore will read things that fit that. So he writes a piece, and that's just a fact, right? I mean, not always. I mean, there's this spectrum, right? So most of us are either we are driven more by moving towards things or away from things. So you might be like, right, I want to get fit and healthy, and I'm moving towards a healthiness. Somebody else might view it as, oh, I'm moving away from that version of myself. Like and everyone's got a balance of the two, but usually more people are more driven by the fear aspect, because it relates to keeping ourselves safe. And one of the things that we are designed to do as human beings is keep ourselves safe. And he wrote a piece, very short piece, and he said, the world is increasingly designed to depress us because happiness is not good for the economy. Because you can't sell something, if you can't sell an anti-aging moisturizer unless you make somebody worry about aging. You can't sell a diet plan unless you make somebody worry about losing weight. You can't make someone vote for a political party unless you make them worry about immigration or whatever it was. I mean, you will have seen, regardless of where we sit on the issue, this is just actual, like, studying what the campaigns did on the Brexit campaign. The Leave campaign was all fear-based. It was all fear-based, and it worked. And it worked, and that's been seen throughout history. So lots of sort of campaigns that end up not going so well for many people, but they got people on side through fear, through othering other people, through pitting people against each other. So that's just I keep that piece and I send it to people. And it sounds cynical, but when you realize that that's what's happening, that is why Good News. I mean, I follow the Good News movement and things like that. And there's the Good News. There was Good News show and things like that. But there is still this piece that we play to people's fears, and that's what sells. And you mentioned earlier, Abby, about pitting people against each other. Well, that happens a lot with women. Now, again, the Rebecca Vardy and Colleen Rooney case, I stayed well away from it because it didn't interest me at the time. But what was fascinating at the end, when the result came out and was fascinating on LinkedIn, where I spend quite a bit of my time, was the amount of people, bit like with the Harry and Meghan thing, who haven't read the stuff, who haven't followed the case, but they
have an opinion.
But they have a clip and they decide to form an opinion. So I was like, right, this is interesting, because the way people were writing about it, oh, these two vacuous women, like, let's go and think about things that matter. Da, 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 da. I was like, hold on a hot minute, right? Somebody's reputation does matter, whether you agree that Colleen Rooney should be doing what she's doing and selling what she sells, or whatever we think about that area of celebrity endorsement, blah, blah, blah. It's her reputation. Somebody was tarnishing it and stealing it. That, for a businesswoman, whatever we think of her business, is an important issue. But the way that many men, not just men, and I'll come on to that bit in a minute, women also were like, oh, they're pathetic, da da da, it doesn't matter who said, she said. Yes, in this case it did matter, because they're able to prove that somebody was trying to tarnish her reputation. That is not okay. I mean, it's not okay anyway. If you're a happy person, you don't go around trashing other people. But Vardy was, the court found she was trying to do it for her own commercial gain, right? So it's business.
Yeah.
So it is important. So firstly, people didn't look at it and they were just like, oh, what a load of nonsense. Look at these women. It's a bitch fight. Meh. And it was all the let's pit women against each other again. And it sold papers. What was fascinating, there's a piece in The Guardian, and I apologize to the author. I cannot remember who wrote it, a female author. And she had written about the case. And I loved this piece that she wrote on the subject of women being pitted against women and tearing each other down. She said, we must also look at ourselves and think about if we're consuming this stuff. Just because we know there's Kool-Aid in the water doesn't mean we ain't drinking it. And that was, I was like, ooh. And I was like, I felt a little bit smug, as you do, because who doesn't like to feel smug about that? I'd kept away from it and I hadn't been like supping the water and like, yeah, give me this water of this celebrity gossip. But it was just, I just really thought, wow, I'm going to keep that close, because that is innate in all of us as well. Brene Brown, who's absolute legendary, amazing, grounded theory, grounded research-based work that she does. She has done a series recently, and she talks about that we are hardwired for comparison. That's what recent research suggests, which sucks. However, she then suggests that if we know this, we can approach ourselves with compassion and think, okay, I'm comparing myself. What do I choose to do about that? So instead of being like, oh, don't compare, like beat yourself up for comparing, I notice that I'm comparing. What do I choose to do about that? And just two really simple statements. So I just think that there's just so much in here that is just fascinating.
That's what, if I'd have stayed in the mindset that I was raised in, I would have been sitting there going, well, she's going to embarrass herself, isn't she? Madonna's going to embarrass herself. I mean, she's 64. What's she doing? I mean, God, like she's nearly a grandmother, blah, 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 all of that old flannel. But I pride myself in surrounding myself with people like you that give me a greater conversation, that give me the opportunity to question what I am saying and my beliefs. And you talk about the comparison. Working in the industry that I do, which is health and well-being, there are many people that are doing the same. And I'm not going to lie, there's been times when you go, should I really be talking to her? Should I, she's really good. Oh my God, she's way better than me, blah, blah, blah. This year has seen a massive shift in my mindset, and I am wanting to sit down as I look to grow the Project Woman community. I want to work with you. I don't care if we do the same. It doesn't matter. We're both in this world. We can feed off each other. Let's do this.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you as well. I've actually had a couple of women say that, no, I don't think it's going to work because we're both the same. And
collaboration over competition, right?
And I think that is so sad, because it might not be that we work together, but you never know what's going to come out of it. And as one great woman said that I met for the first time over Christmas, every experience can offer you that one lead to greatness, or to the greatness that you are seeking. And it's so true. And she spoke about as well, I'm digressing a little bit, how she had 34 women signed up for this gathering that she had in a local bar in Exeter, and 8 of us turned up. And she was like, what's happened? Like, what's happened to people spontaneously, coming out and meeting and being present and being in in company with other people, because when you don't, this is when you start believing this shit.
Yeah.
This is when you don't question that.
Yeah, the final line of Matt Haig's short piece about being driven by fear, which feeds into this, what you were saying, Abby, is he says to be satisfied with our own non-upgraded existence becomes a kind of revolutionary act. And when you were saying about you want to talk to more people, I was like, it feels a revolutionary act to push against, and it is hard. Like even me, I do this in, day out. I know the neuroscience and psychology behind it. I teach people this. I work with them. I help them be great. Like all of the things that are already there in them. And even then, even I am affected by all these things, these forces pushing, pulling. And when you don't widen your circle, or you don't deliberately seek out the people that will challenge you in a good way, and even in a way that you're like, oh, but at least you're thinking and you're getting out of just being fed stuff, because the problem is not always the devices, but the issue that we have at the moment is the algorithms of any of these things will feed us more of what we already see.
Yeah.
And there's an element of we seek that out anyway, right? So how we also operate is you get what you look for. Without social media, that's still the same. Human beings have not changed. So even without social media, if you believed X, if it's so important to you and you really believe it, you will then see that played out over and over and again, because your mind will shut down the other possibilities, won't even see them. And I've had conversations with people, and I'm sure I've even said it before when I was younger and a bit less what's the word? I'm not going to say less intelligent, but less open, perhaps, is when somebody says something about somebody you're hating on, or like, somebody you don't respect or whatever. And you're like, no, well, I don't care. Like, that's an anomaly. I choose not to let that impact my view of this person.
Yeah.
And we know people do this. They're like, yeah, well, so what if so-and-so does good work? It's still an asshole, or whatever it is. They're kind of like, they're not allowing. We have this black and white and this two-dimensional characters, and this is played out. And it's almost depressing how much we lap this up as humans. But it's because it's easy. And that subconscious mind, one of the other prime directives, is it works on the principles of least effort and habit. So if you have habits, you have to make conscious effort to start helping reprogram your subconscious. And of course it's going to work on principles of least effort. So it is hard, and this is why it becomes a revolutionary act, and that's why it feels like this. And I've got some other things I want to say about building confidence, because Abby, you were saying, and how do you get there to a place where you don't
Can I just
but
put in
I was
those-
going to say, I'll come back to me on that one.
Can I just say though, I had this meme come into my head about when you were saying about pushing against what you believe to be true, and it was of a woman in a leotard, and it was in the 70s. I don't know why it was in the 70s, but she had the far forward hair, and she's pushing through, but she's shoving chocolate in her mouth, like, I can do this.
That's actually quite funny.
I could do this, but just give me bars of chocolate so I can just comfort myself in some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
Jade Adams on Strictly, absolutely phenomenal. Don't know if you guys saw that. I'm a massive Strictly fan, but she is a large woman who is a comedian who's very, very funny.
Yeah.
And she was partnering with another woman. She chose to. She's straight, but she wanted to partner with a woman, which again was another excellent breakthrough, side. But when we initially had same-sex partnerships on Strictly, I was like, it's amazing and I love it. But I also wish that all the people that didn't work, it wasn't just because they were gay, because we all, because that's great, but it just gives other people somewhere else to like, kick them, or like say, oh, it's because they're like that. Oh, it's just ridiculous. However, a multitude of options is always what we want to see, right? Oh, huge diversity. So she chose to be partnered with a woman, and they were amazing partnership. They did, I'm gonna say it was something like from Flashdance.
Yes,
I think, like in a leotard. And she was in a leotard, nothing covering it up, and she had the fishnets on. And she spoke a lot about this and how much hate she got for this. And she clearly has worked very hard on being like, that is all you, and I don't care. But she was like, having the best time, and I'd encourage you to go and watch it if you need some joy, people, but also to notice if you start to criticize it or judge it because of our conditioning around body size and things like that. Here's a tip for anybody: how we judge others is usually, it's a brilliant mirror for how you judge yourself. So whenever you judge someone, just think, and how do I apply that to myself? Because that's what I'm doing right there.
Yeah. And I totally agree with that, because my motto in life is, and I keep saying this, I very much try to do it. I know I'm not 100%, but I very much have the motto, treat people how you would wish to be treated. And that's what I try and carry through, because I think it's a good indication of what you'll kind of attract to you.
But no shame, by the way, for judging, because basically we're hardwired to compare, and we all freaking judge. Anybody who says they don't is not telling the truth, right? But again, it's a bit like unconscious bias. It doesn't make you a bad person. I love the phrase that says what you think first is your conditioning. What you do next, or what you do about it, is who you are. And during all the Black Lives Matter and stuff like that, it was really great to be confronted with all this stuff, because, you know, I thought I was one of the good ones, right? And then when you start doing more of the active, I thought I was one of the good ones. And then you realize that you're actually very ignorant in lots of ways. And those thoughts that come into your head that you go, oh, don't shame yourself. It's conditioning. But as long as you notice it, instead of going, oh, no, but I'm not racist, that's fine. Or I'm not a sexist, or I'm not a fat phobic. As long as you don't push it away and you look at it and you go, interesting, where might this have come from? That's not who I am. That's not how I treat people. So it's very important. The shame piece, which again, Brene Brown talks about, really important to allow yourself to acknowledge what's going on up there and be like, interesting, now I can do something about that. Because when you cover yourself with shame for a thought or a deed or an act, no healing happens. That's why shame-based teaching and parenting is now not the way forward. Like, we all loved a bit of Super Nanny and the Naughty Step, but now people know that actually that's a shame-based thing, and it doesn't foster self-esteem, which leads to confidence.
I mean, do you continue to go and sit on the step when you're 34? I mean,
I'm sitting on the step anyway.
Really hysterical.
I don't even get told to sit on the step.
Time out because I hate you.
I think a timeout to think and reflect is very different from a sit on the step of shame, or stand in the corner and face the wall, or stand by the flagpole that I had to do many times. I was, you know, and I was one of these.
So posh, Charlotte.
No, it was broken. It was broken. It was. I'm not posh at all. This is what's really funny. Like, I grew up in Aldershot. I was home of the British Army, so there's a lot of flagpoles around. But it was broken, and we never had a flag on it. It was just the spot of shame. The spot of shame
with no flag.
No flag.
So shameful.
It was a very military kind of. You know, I'm not in the military. Neither of my family. It's just a cheap place to live. That's why my parents lived there, because we have 4 kids.
You know, coming back to what you said about the shame thing, though, what I see is whenever something comes up, it's the echoes of voices. And the funny thing is, you can hear those initial, you know, those jabs towards others, but then my adult self just starts laughing, and it's like, come on, that's it's just so not you. And sometimes you can even hear the voices from certain people, can't you? I mean, I know I can. That's how I do it. And I'm like, it's not mine. It's just not mine, and it's fine.
Yeah.
And I think it is. You know, the more we ignore, the more they become. You know,
they're loud. Or if you try and argue with it. There's an amazing book that I'd love everybody, not just women. I send it to my male clients who love it. It's called Playing Big by Tara Moore, and it is absolutely brilliant. And it talks about the inner critic, you know, this inner voice. And it gives you, the reason I love it, and I've got it on my desk, I take it on every holiday, it is the most bad book you've ever seen. It's got practical journaling prompts and practical things you can do. And she talks about arguing with that voice doesn't work. You acknowledge it, and you acknowledge that its reason that it's criticizing you or in there is to keep you safe. Right? That's remember, our whole being is designed to keep us safe. So this criticism is all, including from people that loved us and brought us up and gave us all these values and beliefs that now we don't subscribe to, is because they wanted to keep us safe, right? And then it's to say thank you, I hear that, and I don't need that safety now, or I can create safety myself, or any of these. So she's got really great chapters, really great practical things you can say and do to get around these. And chapter 8 is a game changer. It is called Communicating with Power. And it's all those sort of phrases that we use as women, but men do use them too. However, women have been socially conditioned in the workplace to use them and diminish our power a bit more because of how we're seen as aggressive, not assertive. And she says, I hate the fact this is where the world is. However, there are ways that we can hold our power and still soften the landing of it so that we retain power and we have impact. And that chapter is really good as well. You know, the things we say like just checking in, or we apologize a lot. I remove just from my emails now all the time. And there's lots of little things where you think she gives actual practical suggestions of wording you can use instead, you know, that's more empowering, but no less, but it's inviting people. One of my favorites is, does that make sense? You know, when you say that, and
I do that a lot. I do that all the time.
Men do it too. So what she suggests is, what we're trying to do is trying to invite comment. We're trying to say, hey guys, I've put it out there. I'm not the authority in absolutely everything. What do you think? Or what questions do you have? So she suggests finishing and then saying, what questions does anyone have? Or what questions do you have? What would you like to ask me? Because that is a presupposition. So you're saying to people, I know you're going to have questions. I'm here to receive them without questioning your own authority. So does that make sense? Instead, you're like, you finish and it feels uncomfortable to start with because it's like a tick, right? And then you're like, how does that land? What questions do you have? Anything that isn't a yes or a no response, but invites in warmth. So she is amazing. That is such a great book.
Can I just say, I and no disrespect, but it's same with the word hope. I hope you had a great time. I hope we can get together. Oh, no, the best one is when, and I kind of know when someone doesn't want to meet me because they go, I hope we meet up soon. So I'm like,
what gave you the idea of that, Abby?
I really hope I see you soon. You have a really nice life, and we will chat probably on social media sometime in the future. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of hope because I honestly believe that when you direct yourself in the way that you're meant to go and you direct your actions in the way that you want to go, you don't need hope and you don't need luck. There is divine intervention. I do believe in divine intervention. I believe in that time coming together at its most not perfect, greatest point. But to hope, I'm not so sure on that one.
It needs to be followed with action. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? From hope comes great things, but then you need to act on it. Because nothing.
It's like my meme woman running, a leotard and shoving chocolate down her face and saying, I'm going to lose a stone.
We haven't got much time left. And one thing I wanted to ask Charlotte was, earlier you mentioned confidence adventurer. Have I got that right?
Oh, so executive adventurer is my brand name. And I work with people usually around inner critic, imposter syndrome, and confidence, but the executive adventurer is the name. Yeah.
Executive adventurer. Summary, how would you summarize that? I'm just intrigued by that branding, executive adventurer, and what does it mean? What does it entail?
So it's what I like to call, it describes that it's not a label. It describes the psychographics of my ideal client rather than their demographics and what I want us all to be, right? So executive, like you say, taking action and making things happen and directing our lives, and adventure, right? Whatever that means to people. And often I do work with executives, and I do also, because I do a lot of adventures, like proper ones, I also like to bring the two things together. And then later this year, I'm hoping to take an expedition of women out to do full driving in hopefully Zimbabwe, maybe Botswana. So I've done some of that myself.
Then, Charlotte.
Well, hopefully Zimbabwe, but it depends on the situation of travel and all those sort of things, which I can't do anything about. So yeah, hopefully one of those countries, if we can work it out with visas and then the exchange rate and all that, which we can't do. We can't.
Do you do
sadly
things like that to take them out their comfort zone and show them what could be achieved in their life? So not that you to go and do that, but
yeah. So there's two things I'm running this year that are sort of pilots, and one of them is what I call a dive deeper retreat, which is in Indonesia in April and May, and that's combining breathwork and coaching and scuba diving, because again, that's a lot out of comfort zone. It's in the middle of this amazing place, Indonesia, which will that'll be in April. But when I have my client programs, I have at least a day within each 3 months that I call a client day, which is where I say to them, you get to choose depending on what you're working on, and depending on what you sorry, I'm just going to decline this call. Depending on what you're working on, and depending on what they want to achieve, I will then design a day that suits them. We spend a whole day together instead of just the hour and a half in the session. And yes, sometimes they want to get outside of their comfort zone. Sometimes they want to challenge themselves. Sometimes it is adventures. So with one of my clients, we went bike packing for 2 days. And afterwards I said to her, because that's what she chose. Well, she said she wanted an adventure. I was like, okay, I'll design something. And she'd never cycled more than 10K. And we ended up doing, I think, 40 kilometers or something like that. And I said, so what did you learn? She goes, I learned that I can. Like, and often you just need somebody with you to take that first step and then like, oh, now I'm ignited and I'm off. And other people need a bit more bit by bit by bit. And some people will go from the complete opposite, like never even walked to the shop, now running a marathon. And everyone is different in that sort of that confidence regard and that challenge. But that's why I love the Executive Adventurer, and I can combine some sort of adventures in what I do, but most of it is face-to-face based work and doing the internal work of getting some of this self-esteem and this confidence and reducing the inner critic's voice and addressing the imposter syndrome. And what I think was great, and I wrote a note because I wanted to come back to it, was when we talk about confidence, and Abby, you asked Faye, like, how did you get to the point where you didn't care anymore? And Faye, you described 2 things that happened to you in your life. And these values that are set for us when we're, before we're 13, they often are shaken up by life events. And they're like, what the hell? I'm going to do this. But when that doesn't happen, you can actually choose to change them. And there's a phrase, isn't there? It says confidence isn't walking into a room and thinking that you're better than everyone else in there. It's walking into a room and not even bothering to compare. And when I ran a confidence series of confidence workshops in the autumn, and I started with the definition, which is that it comes from self-esteem, because people often worried, well, if I build my confidence, won't I be seen as arrogant? But arrogance comes from insecurity. And people who are arrogant are covering up insecurity. So when you work to build your self-esteem with any of these exercises or tools or any of the stuff that we work on in the work that I do, you build your self-esteem, and confidence comes as a result of that, as well as some of the doing of the stuff. So this combination of the inner work that you have to do to address what's going on for you and to realize what beliefs you are holding that might be holding you back, and all of that alongside the doing.
My doorbell. Sorry.
It's like you, like a god. The doorbell's going to ring any moment now. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up now. Charlotte, thank you. What I want to just end with is what you said with regards to your client, and she realized that she could. And I feel that we should all be channeling our inner Madonna with, no matter what age you are, where you are in life, that you can. Let's use this. Let's dissolve these feelings of comparison. Let's dissolve these feelings of inadequacy and lacking of value, and reach out to more women like Madonna. Don't be afraid. Connect with them, because the more, like we've said in this conversation, the more you put yourself into conversations and experiences with like-minded people, the more you fire up those receptor cells within your body to receive more of that, and it becomes a belief.
It does. You're absolutely right. That is one of the ways to change beliefs, is repetition and storytelling. And you have to show your mind works on the principles of least effort. So it will go to the things that are already strong with it, right? So if you flood it full of stuff that you want to believe, even if the belief isn't very strong, if you look at all the people and the things that could be possible and what could be true and all of that, it gradually begins to take note, and then it starts to look for it. Remember, we look for things that we believe. We look for the things that confirm our belief, because belief keeps us safe. So if you want to grow a new belief, you start writing a list of all the things you want to believe, all the examples you can find, and then you go out and you find them. And the more you find them, the more you will start to naturally look for them, whatever that is. So Abby, that is an amazing piece of advice to people, because that actually literally is how we change beliefs.
And what a great way to end it. You just made a very nice one.
I'm back.
Amen.
What did you get? Anything exciting?
Yes. Amazon. Thank you so much for joining us. Any questions, please write in the comments. Please share. I will share Charlotte's details, mine and Faye's. Get in touch with either or all of us. We want to hear from you, because like we said, conversation and communication are key. Thank you, my darlings.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Great to see you. Bye.
Bye.